While reminiscing with my friend about our days in high school, the television's background noise suddenly grabbed my attention. The newscaster was covering the Gaza War, the 3 weeks of heightened fighting during the Gaza Strip during the winter of 2008 to 2009. As my friend and I sat transfixed by the news anchor's voice, a silence swept across the room, turning our laughter into blank stares aimed at the television. Watching the footage of Israeli soldiers dressed in their military uniforms ready for war, I started to think about the history of the Jewish people. 2,000 years of persecution, segregation, and torment, living in another person's land as a second-class citizen, all the while bearing the knowledge you do not have a land of your own to venture to for safety and security. Their Aliyah, their return to the homeland, was owed to them by a world that had barred its doors even as the Jews were being slaughtered by the Nazis. The creation of Israel in 1948 was one of the greatest triumphs of the 20th century for millions of displaced Jews. I understood why the Israelis were fighting in Gaza. They just wanted their own land. I looked over at my friend, who I knew was of Palestinian origin, her gaze still stuck on the talking box. Her eyes were filled with tears, and I silently watched as each drop rolled down her trembling cheeks. I knew this had to be a matter that was dear to her. I couldn't just pass this by. Emotions of curiosity and determination started spinning through me. To even begin to sympathize with my friend's emotions, I knew that I had to learn about the history of the event. Looking at maps, I saw that the Palestinians had lost most of the coast, access to fresh water, and the entire Negev. Sifting through British and recently disclosed Israeli military documents, I began to see that Israel had full support from the British, and were a much more established army than the Palestinians, who barely had an army at all. Thinking back to my friend's saddened eyes, I now began to understand. I was becoming connected with an event that did not directly affect me. The injustice that had been done to the inhabitants of Palestine was starting to become my reality. As I continued to research, I came across a picture that I still cannot get out of my mind. I was awestruck by the sight of a young boy being yanked up by the collar by Israeli soldiers. My eyes were fixed on his expression of absolute terror. I could feel anger rising in my chest as I looked at the teenage soldiers laughing at the child's fear. My world as I knew it started to spin. I could feel my face start to flush as I began to feel almost connected to the boy. After reading all the documents and watching the news broadcasts, seeing this innocent young boy's face, I was finally brought to tears. My own memories, gained through research, allowed me to sympathize and feel, if only just a fraction of the misery that my friend, who was directly affected by the event, felt. Talking to my friend, now having a better understanding of the events that had occurred in Palestine, I could understand the causes of her pain. I was able to grasp the meaning and significance of each story she told me, each picture she showed me, and each feeling she shared with me. My findings gave me the opportunity to connect with millions of displaced people, even though I myself was not directly touched by what the Palestinians referred to as al-Nakba, meaning catastrophe. As more people become acquainted with the events in Palestine, there is hope for change, because as long as a nation can be truthful about its past, it can be hopeful about its future.